Hello, everyone, and welcome to Policy on Demand. Over the past few decades, we have all seen a lot of ups and downs in business, the stock market, the economy, and let's face it, life. Here in PwC's DC office, we've been fortunate to have a calming presence through those ups and downs, Drew Lyon. Before leading the economics practice here, Drew served as Deputy Assistant Secretary for Tax Analysis at the Treasury Department, and he was on the staffs of the President's Council of Economic Advisors and the Joint Committee on Taxation. And that's just part of his distinguished resume. On June 30th, he's retiring, and we asked him one more time to be on Policy on Demand. Julie Allen had the opportunity to speak with Drew and get his thoughts on the prevailing economic issues of the day. We hope you enjoy this episode.
Drew, thank you so much for joining me today for a conversation, and this is on the eve of your retirement.
Thank you, Julie.
I'll jump right in. We have, for so many years, our clients, companies, and all of us internally have gained so much insight from you about the economy and economic considerations that we need to be thinking about. So let's start off there. Anything that we all need to be thinking about with the economy or that our clients need to take into consideration? I would love to get your thoughts on that.
Well, in keeping with my retirement, let me provide a longer term outlook here. And one troubling factor is the long-term growth of the economy. Both the Federal Reserve and the Congressional Budget Office forecast that by the end of the decade, the economy will grow annually at only about a 1.7 or 1.8% growth rate. That compares to over 3 percentage points per year from the early 1990s until the 2007-2008 recession. So the economy is growing almost half as fast as it used to. We're an aging society, slower population growth, and that alone is going to make it harder for corporations to grow their profits. It's a lot easier to grow your profits year to year when the economy is growing at 3% real terms instead of closer to 1.5%. But the rest of the world is going to be growing at double the rate of the US. So despite the concerns that arose during COVID about retrenching to the US, reshoring, so forth, globalization will continue to be an important factor for US companies. Global markets, those are key growth opportunities for US companies. So I would say, keep your eye on the long run where those growth opportunities are.
And that's a great way to frame it in the long run, because when you give those statistics of how we grew historically and where we are now, that really is an eye-opener for thinking about what we would do or how we would position ourselves as companies. Okay, so sticking with some of those same economic things, efforts to reduce the U.S. corporate tax rate and then also to keep the U.S. as a competitive taxing system has been a real bipartisan effort for years when they've been looking at enacting tax reform. So as you think of future tax reform in the face of these long-standing structural U.S. budget deficits that we're hearing about, what should we consider there?
Yeah, so here it's more difficult. Just 2 years from now, Congress will be debating what to do with the individual tax relief that was passed as part of the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act in 2017. Those individual provisions all expire at the end of 2025. Corporations are looking at increases in the GILTI rate that automatically will occur unless Congress does something, higher tax rates under FDII, higher BEAT tax rates. We're looking for significant tax actions then, maybe responding to Pillar 2 in some way. But Congress is also going to be doing that against the backdrop of really these troubling long-term structural deficits. Right now, the cumulative deficit over the next 10 years is over $20 trillion. Interest expense constitutes more than half of that. And just to stay on interest expense, the Congressional Budget Office forecasts that interest expense will exceed all spending on the Defense Department by 2028. So it's a significant cost. By the end of the current 10-year period, taxes, as they exist in the law right now, are only sufficient to fund 70% of spending. If Congress wanted to eliminate the deficit by raising taxes, that would require a 40% across the board increase. That's significant. Or if you do it on the spending side, a 30% cut in spending. We saw from the debt limit negotiations just a week or two ago how difficult it is to make significant spending reductions. So it's a troubling time to be facing essentially tax reform again in 2025. So again, I think the key for corporations is first be aware of this very difficult fiscal situation that tax law is going to be debated in, and think through what are really the growth enhancing reforms, what will help the US economy the most. Looking at the growth discussion we just had, the faster the economy is growing, the better it'll be for Americans. More tax revenue will arise as well. We do know the corporate tax is one of the least efficient taxes in terms of economic growth. So hopefully we're not looking at corporate tax increases, but we have this tremendous fiscal deficit that does have to be addressed. Likely it will be addressed both through spending and tax revisions.
And I think there you've just laid out all the factors that come into play, right? Yes, the debt limit, yes, interest, but also the cost, the spending. It's interesting how you look at all of that together to realize the impact that has on the economy, and that we need to be keeping our eye on all of that.
Yeah, and without it, the debt is forecast to continue to grow relative to the size of the economy. And at some point, the interest burden just becomes too large. And we want to stop it before a crisis is on the horizon.
Yeah, that word crisis we tend to like to avoid. Absolutely. Speaking about that, there have been, if I look at the last few decades, we've had some real economic factors or crises or issues that have come up. If you think of the 2007 to 2008 financial crisis and the Great Recession and our recent pandemic, all of these have had a key impact on our economy. So Drew, as you look at the past, but then bring that to the future, are there things that we should be looking at that would be key stabilizing factors to watch for in our future economy to help with that fear factor, I guess I would say?
Right. Well, I'm an optimist on the US economy from this perspective. We have a tremendous dynamic economy, and that dynamism really makes our economy more stable and, in the long run, growing better than many other economies. If we look back to 2019, before COVID, the US economy grew by over 5% in real terms between 2019 and 2022. That's pretty good considering the tremendous slowdown in activity that occurred in 2020 because of COVID. Our growth rate is more than double the growth rate of the European Union during that same period. And that speaks to, again, our institutions, the dynamism. We had a lot of job loss, but we had a lot of job gain in other sectors. So our economy is able to respond to that. To take another example, the United Kingdom, by the end of 2022, still had not recovered their economy from where it was before the pandemic started. So we have a lot of inherent strengths from our capitalistic market economy. That dynamism is a good thing. Yes, jobs are lost, but jobs can quickly be gained in other sectors. And so from a policy perspective, we need to maintain that attitude that a strong growing economy requires that dynamism and allow companies to be responsive to those forces.
And Drew, I think right there is where we'll end, because we're going to end on that high note and on your optimism. And I'm just going to thank you for joining me today, and also for your years of insight. I mean, the clarity and the insight that you provided today with our current economy and the stabilizing issues that we can think about, those stabilizing factors for the future. I think that clarity and insight you've provided for years for our corporations, our clients, and for many of us. So thank you, and thank you for joining me today.
Well, thank you, Julie. I've really appreciated this opportunity at PwC.